Sunday after Easter, which is going to lead us to the celebration of the ascension of Jesus Christ and ultimately to the Sunday of Pentecost in weeks to come. We continue to follow the Gospel of John, this from the 20th chapter. It teaches the story from which we get that famous phrase, "Don't be a doubting Thomas, don't be a doubting Thomas." But really, when we read this story from the Gospel, we see that Thomas was one with great curiosity. He really wanted to know. He might have been fond of the modern tabloid that uses the motto, "Inquiring minds want to know." He wanted to know that his master was truly raised. When it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, and the doors of the house where the disciples had met were locked for fear, Jesus came and stood among them, and he said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples rejoiced. They saw the Lord. And Jesus said to them, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you." When he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained." But Thomas, who was called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So the disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But Thomas said, "Unless I see the mark of the nails on his hands, and put my finger into the mark on his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them this time. Although the doors were locked, Jesus came through them and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed and mature are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe." Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written so that you may come to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that through Christ indwelling him, you may have life as he did. Thanks be to God for the reading of the Word. Well, it is my pleasure at this time to welcome Brian Clarke of St. Louis here. Brian is not only performing his wonderful music in many of the churches in St. Louis, but now he is a frequent speaker at Unity Christ Church by Washington University, Unity Church of Peace in St. Charles, Divine Science Church in South City, and Religious Science? Yeah. So he really makes the circuit, spreading the good, gracious truth to these various centers in the city of St. Louis. So I said, please, come share your insights, your gift, and your own life lessons with us this morning. And so he is. I welcome him to the platform.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Well, friends, it has been a great weekend. And I have enjoyed it so much. Friday was so much fun. And then I was able to spend a couple days with James, Reverend James, and he was a gracious host, and I've enjoyed getting to know James better, and my time with him was very rich. I'm gonna embarrass him some. I just find him brilliant, and he was as much as I study and research stuff, he had whole chapters and books about stuff that I had never knew nothing about. But somehow he left me feeling okay about myself. So where is your train of thought taking you? And I just want to point this little bit of synchronicity out this morning, because I came in with a song to play first. It was in my mind all night. I'll do that. And then someone said, would you do something you did Friday? And so I'll do something that I didn't do Friday, but I would have gotten around to it if we had gone longer. And it was a song about the train, which led to Reverend James' quote. And that's exactly what my message is about. It's about direction. It's about where are we going. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for having me down over the weekend. This has just been a treat. And your support of the music on the first Fridays is really great. And although it's a trek from St. Louis to Kansas City, I'm really happy to see that everyone who's come down to play has seen fit to come back, and everyone finds it so rewarding that they want to come back. So even if it was further, we'd be down here. So I want to talk about a sense of direction. I have a friend who was a ski instructor, and he told me that if there's an avalanche and you find yourself buried in snow, you don't know, because you've been tumbling, and you come to rest, and you're just buried in this stuff, and you don't know which way's out. And part of the problem is people will start climbing to whatever direction's in front of them or above them, but they might be upside down. So what he said they teach you to do is you just let some saliva roll over your lips, and if it rolls down, then this way's up. But it's like you have to sort of figure out, based on which direction this is flowing, which way to dig. I thought, well, that's something. And sometimes we have ideas about where we want to go, but we don't know. And then there's like the Wizard of Oz thing where there's the scarecrow who's pointing both ways, and it's useless. But we do have a compass in our heart. And when we begin to entertain ideas that we find ourselves agitated or getting wound up in a negative way in the spirit, it tells us that what we are thinking is in conflict with the way Source sees us. So anytime our heart begins to become unrestful and ill at ease, it's time to just stop and check where we are and ask ourselves, is this true? Is this how Source sees me? And I've developed some techniques that would help me when this would, when I'd wake up on the wrong side of the bed, which, we do from time to time. We all of a sudden find ourselves feeling a little bit negative, and we don't know why, but for reasons that I'll talk about later, we can't afford to stay there, because you're either going forward, you're going back, or you're standing still. And if you're standing still, you're going backwards. So we cannot afford to do that. can't afford to sit still. We can't afford to wallow in thoughts that take us away from where Source sees us. Because that is our heaven on earth, being in alignment, seeing ourselves the way God sees us. So, Greg Braden, well, he tells a story about this long, protracted drought that was going on, I think, in New Mexico, back in the early 90s. And it had been going on for a long time and had become a big topic locally. But when is this going to stop? When are we going to get some rain? So he's sitting at a restaurant with a Native American friend of his. And he said, the Native American says, Greg, I'm going up to do a rain dance, and I'd like you to come. So they get in the car and they drive up to this, I guess it's a site that is considered sacred. And this fellow builds a circle of stone. And he steps inside of it. And Greg's just watching. And he's walking around the edge of the circle. And all of a sudden he just stops and he's just in prayer for about 30 seconds. And then he goes, okay, I'm hungry, let's go. And Greg says, well, I thought you were going to have a ceremony. And he goes, I did. Well, what did you do? And he said, well, I pictured what the ground would look like when the rains came. I felt what it would feel like to have my feet in the mud. I smelled how the village would smell with the thatched roofs from all the rain, and how the corn would smell, and how everything would feel, how it would be to literally be in that place. And while the universe reads our thoughts, it knows what we think, the native language is one of what's in our heart. So our thoughts guide our heart. And what we have there speaks to the creative force, and that's what helps us manifest things. For example, if you were thinking, I'm going to go on a vacation, and you thought, I'm going to go to a place that's a nice hotel. Maybe it's near some water, and there's a bar downstairs that I could go to. And maybe there'll be some restaurants close by that I like, and there'll be a deck that I could sit out on. It almost sounds like you're reading a brochure of somebody or someone else's vacation. But if you see it like, I want to go out onto that sand and feel the sun, feel the heat off the sand. I want to walk down to the water's edge, and I want to feel the way the waves rush across my ankles and then rush back out. I hear these seagulls up above my head. I see this clear blue sky. I see there's kids running back and forth, and there's beach balls. One bounces by me. I'm feeling it. I love the way this feels. I'd like to stay here forever. This feels so good. And you're picturing it, and suddenly it's in your body. I came up with some tools because I'm very self-critical. Been that way for a long time. Really hard on myself. And no matter what it is I do, I would find, well, that just wasn't good enough. And it doesn't matter what I did. There'd be this voice that would do this, and I'd go home at the end of the day, and no matter what I had done, it felt like I'd failed. And finally, one day I just said, that's it. I've had it with that. I don't care anymore about if I fail. I just want to be happy. I just want to feel better. And I remember it was a Sunday afternoon. I sat down on the bed and I thought, I'm willing to be delusional about this. I'm going to tell myself that no matter what happens, no matter what I do, that it was great, that it was good, and no matter what occurs, I'm going to tell myself that I trust it and I like it, and I'm going to be happy with it. And I thought, I'm 60 years old. What do I have to lose? So I can spend the next so many years just being the delusional crazy person who's always happy. And that beats this. So oddly enough, later in the day I realized, well, hey, this beating up on yourself all the time and never being good enough, I remember where I got that. I was just carrying on what my dad taught me. And so it was a little bit easier to understand how I got that way. But the craziest and great part about it is that it was almost like the minute that I said, I surrender. I trust whatever it is comes my way, and I'm going to love it. I'm going to say it's great. I'm going to be happy with it. Suddenly, everything changed. And information began to come to me about how important it was that I made that decision. Because I learned that the heart is such a powerful part of who we are. It's probably our physical connection to God. It's we think, but when we think first and we feel it and then we see it. So we never leave our hearts behind. So I thought some of these days I'd wake up and be agitated, and I knew that since what I was feeling in my heart was going to start manifesting, I couldn't afford to let it just drift. So if I wake up sluggish, I knew that I had to do something. I needed to do something right away to change that momentum and get the thing flowing, get the river flowing in the right direction. So I came up with this idea that I would get these little flashcards, and I would just get 10 of them or so, and I would write down something that I knew I liked. Like, I love sunsets. Who doesn't? But, I love going to baseball games. I'm a Cardinals fan, you Royals guys. Various things. There's certain music that I like. I like the way it feels. I love the way it feels when you're taking a walk just as the sun's setting. And the world just takes on this sort of enchanted look. There's something special about that. And so I would write about that, and I'd think about that. And I would spend about 10 or 15 seconds at the most on each one, and then I'd go to the next card. And suddenly, whatever it was that was bothering me was gone. I was like, I'd established a new flow, and I was off. And I would also begin each day by writing an affirmation for me, for that day, for that moment. And it turned into like a lot of fun, because it would not only would it set my intention in a way that I was kind of designing it, but it usually would kick off more and more ideas. And so I would start with this affirmation, but then I'd start writing more and more, and it would all be this stuff that when I read it back, oh, that's a lovely thought. And so the whole thing was just this self-generating, propulsive thing that was moving me up. And, my heart's just ascending. Ascension is coming, and so it's a good thing. So, I would like to say that most of us probably know these things, but we're surrounded by our children and our grandkids, and it's good to have this to share with them. You know, if I'd have really known this little simple stuff when I was 20, I think I would. Well, I like where it turned out, but a lot of grief would have been avoided. You know, I caused a lot of it, I admit. So, I think the most powerful tool is this idea that I just kind of go on a scavenger hunt during the day. That instead of just driving down the road mindlessly, thinking about where I'm going to go, I'm looking for something that is beautiful, something that I just feel connects me to something that makes my heart feel lighter. And suddenly you find it. It might be the way the light is shining on a building that you'd been by 50 times, 500 times, and you never noticed it before. But suddenly it's helping you. And I think sometimes when we ask for help and we wonder where it is, help! It's right there. It's already given to us in the form of these little things that we can access and touch points with, contact, and the presence is there everywhere. So you may decide, I'm going to hold this door open for somebody, and you don't know them, and they might not think anything of it. But you know that you did this intentionally to make their day a little better. And that lifts your heart some. Pretty soon, you're just kind of rising up above the chaos. And another good one is we get an email that's political, and you just want to hit reply. But you just let it go. And that feels great. Because you intentionally have just sidestepped this tiger, you can pretty much turn the TV off forever and it won't hurt you. But I love what it does when you just walk by somebody and you just look at them and say hi. When you've done this intentionally because you just want them to know that you see them. And while it's true that we serve ourselves and we think about ourselves all day, all the time, ironically, the best way to serve ourselves is through others. And it's just so interesting how that fits, and it's upside down from it's these acts of unselfishness that turn out to be so self-enriching. So once we get on this little groove of looking for things, finding ways to just find some beauty, to lift our hearts, to do the things that, we suddenly start seeing our heart is feeling and sensing, and we're thinking of ourselves the way God thinks of us. And we can feel it. And then things begin to start manifesting quicker because our vibrations are moving up. And our projections of the world are replicating faster and faster. It's so interesting. And I just want to say, I hope you guys try this, if you're not already, because how fast this made a huge difference in my life was stunning. And I'm really excited about it. And I love the thought that I can work myself away from something that's troubling me and get to a better place. And I know how I got there because it was intentional. And I know that I can do it tomorrow. I can do it the next day. I can do it anytime I need to because I learned how to do it. And so I can tell you for sure that I am going to leave later today. I'm going to go home and it's going to be a great day. Because I've just decided it's going to be a good day no matter what. I have another job to play in St. Louis at 3 o'clock. So I have to, when I get done, I'm going to be running out of here really quickly. And I want to say, before I even stop, thank you. I have loved every minute of my time here. And I can't wait to come back. I just invited myself back. Anyway. But it has been great. And James, you are just my favorite. I just thrilled with the time we spent. And thank you. I am forgetting the person's name who sponsored this concert on Friday. Helen. Please tell Helen thank you. And thank you, Karen, for getting me my, what do I call that? It's a diffuser. I have a diffuser. Yes. My wife's going to be thrilled when I show up with this thing. It's really awesome. So I thought we'd move into a little bit of a meditation. And while we're taking a few deep breaths, closing our eyes, the great thing about meditation is that while we are breathing in, our focus is on our breath. And the momentum of our thoughts stops. And we can begin anew. So today, we focus on our heart and the sense that heaven is alive and present in our heart. And when we pray from our hearts, we are praying in the most effective way. Today, I am rising every hour. And I am finding joy in many things in my life. I'm committed to the prayer of observing beauty. I choose up. I choose higher. I choose joy and love all day, every day. Now, and now, and now. Mine is a new world. I pause and consider what's best in this moment. I make a free choice. It's a powerful choice. And it shifts my sail into alignment with the winds of Source. The fields of bliss and joy are in full bloom today. In every moment, I am making choices that lift me up and align me with those fields. I start this day with ecstasy glowing and radiating in my body. I now expect that everything that happens is a part of some conspiracy on the part of Source to make my life wondrous. I choose higher. I choose joy and love all day, every day. Father, Mother, God, we thank you. We thank you for being here with us. We are home, always. You are amid us, with us, part of us. You give us courage, confidence, strength, and zeal. We thank you, we thank you, we thank you. So it is. So as we come back, before we open our eyes, let us agree that today is going to be a good day.